Hey, Off-White Coat listeners, it is my privilege to get to tell you about this sweet deal from our friends over at Picmonic. If you haven't heard about Picmonic, it is a fantastic picture-based mnemonic platform that can certainly help out any student. Most of the videos are around 2 minutes long and provide a quick and effective way to memorize material for any upcoming medical exam. It is extremely efficient. They have this search bar function where you can search playlists on general topics like renal to step 1 to step 2, or even first aid and other books. If you want to review the Picmonic for later, you can even make a playlist of your own. Picmonic even has this repetition algorithm that is spaced out according to your learning needs. This helps with increasing long-term retention and allows you to review the right information at the right time. One of my favorite functions is the quizzes that are associated with each Picmonic. I'll take the quiz first and then learn about the associated pictures and what facts I need to sharpen up on. Honestly, Picmonic is a fantastic tool, and if you use our code OFFWHITECOAT, you'll get 20% off. That's Off-White Coat with no spaces. So what are you waiting for? Make studying the easiest part of your day. Sign up with Picmonic and use Off-White Coat to save yourself some money. Hello everyone and welcome to the Off-White Coat podcast. I'm your host Jordan Abney and today I'm joined with my beautiful girlfriend Mary Beth Skinner. Today we're going to do another rotation in review. This is going to be my first rotation, the Pediatrics rotation, and Mary Beth is actually the one that has been through all these rotations with me, and she has seen a whole nother side and heard plenty of the stories and everything. She is actually going to be not only joining, but she's going to be taking over as the host today, and so she is now in control. She's got the hot seat. I guess I'm in the hot seat. Mm-hmm. She's now in control. She's going to be asking the questions, and I'm going to be answering. So settling for a new host today, or co-host, or whatever. Here I am. It might be a settle, but I'm
just
kidding.
It is what it is. It's fine.
No. I'm sure you'll do better than I do.
I do remember your first rotation very well, though, because we had just moved to Jersey City. We'd gotten there a few days earlier. That way we could, go and find your hospital, and I remember
that was a shock.
It was kind of a struggle to get there because that was the first time we kind of rode the subway system, and we had to jump subways a couple of times, or not jump physically, but change.
No, she jumped.
Yeah, Jordan couldn't even get me to change carts while it was moving. There's no way I'm jumping.
Yeah,
but anyways,
she should have
jumped.
No.
I should have jumped.
No, the switching of the cards, but yes, I'll have to. No, I'm kidding.
Anyways, I remember going to Brooklyn with you so you could find your hospital, and you had to fill out paperwork and, I think get your badge and maybe even your scrubs, I'm not sure. But you and Lauren, one of our friends who was also in the rotation with you, who lived in the area we lived in, Jersey City, we all three went, and I remember I had Riley, and we just waited for you outside, and outside was kind of sketchy.
It was a sketchy area. Yeah, the hospital that I stayed at, or that I worked at, was called Woodhull.
At Woodhull.
Yeah, at Woodhull. They used to have this rap song that would play over the intercom. Oh, we'll have to get to that, but that was how it went. At Woodhull. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't have to worry about copyright issues because I looked for the song everywhere on the internet and could not find it.
No.
People didn't believe it happened, but I swear it is. But yeah, the neighborhood was very sketchy-ish. It definitely was serving the, lower income aspect of Brooklyn, not just because of where it was located, but it also there's a lot of huge, well-renowned hospitals in the similar area in New York, and this one is not at the very top tier of that one. Now, it's a good hospital. It's a decent size. They have a bunch of different things, and I'm sure for different specialties, they have a better standing in the medical community or whatever. But it was a decent hospital, I guess, is what I'm saying. It was not superior. It wasn't an NYU or, John Hopkins or something like that.
All right, yeah. Let's just not talk yourself up, because you definitely learned a lot.
Oh, yes. I learned a ton. First off,
It doesn't
we should
matter
probably scratch
that
most of that. Because,
yeah.
Okay, Woodhull was definitely in the lower aspect of Brooklyn. You know, it was not the best neighborhood. It did have a Starbucks nearby.
Yeah.
But honestly, though, it was kind of great in regards to the fact that it was like my first rotation, and you know, I was like a little gunner. Like I was like, oh yeah, like I know a lot of people. So if you are an SGU student, it is a relatively chill location to do your pediatrics at. You know, a lot of people could fall through the cracks, but I was like, oh yeah, like, and I got to do a lot of interesting things, so it was great.
Why do you say it was chill?
Because there's an opportunity in medical school where you could fall through the cracks. There's a couple different subspecialties that we were going to. So there was 3 different ones where you did either pediatric emergency, NICU, or you did like outpatient pediatrics. And those are split between 2 weeks. And there was a couple students with you, and most of them, they didn't really bring you in or introduce you. So nobody really knew who you were. And so a lot of people took this opportunity to you could fall through the cracks, you know?
Yeah. So what does that mean? Like just
go home, I guess.
Okay.
And nobody get onto you. I don't know. But I was saying, like, I was a gunner at that time, so I didn't even understand that. Like I like little kids too. So if you have a bunch of little kids in a room, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be drawn towards that before I go.
Right. But I think you starting off in pediatrics, even chill or not, or being able to fall through the cracks, like you said, you took the opportunity to not do that, and you went pretty much every day, and you would wake up at like 6 and get there by 8.
Yes, it was a little bit of a commute.
Yeah, it was like an hour commute, and then you wouldn't get home till like I'd say 5 or 6, maybe even 7. Mm-hmm. So you were there pretty much all day. Yeah,
I was there for a long time. But honestly, it was, when I say chill, I guess I also mean that the attendings and everything, they were not out to get you. It was not a tough work environment. Like, they were actually very, very helpful and kind of forthcoming with their help. So I was able to like blend in well with the medical team. Mm-hmm. As opposed to sometimes it's so high stress that your buttholes clench half the time.
I feel like this was the rotation you probably learned the most in. And I don't even think that's just because you went every day. I think you got to do a bunch of hands-on stuff that prepared you for the rest of your rotations. Like, I don't know. I think so, just because of the stories you would come home with, or maybe they were just eventful.
No, I mean,
patients.
There was certainly a lot of eventful patients, but you are right. There are a lot of skills that I was able to pick up in the pediatrics rotation that I don't know if I would have if I had, like, those are skills that transferred over. Mm-hmm. One of those skills is putting in like IV lines. Mm-hmm. I remember they only needed you to do 5. And you did the pediatric emergency department. Well, there was like an outbreak of chlamydia going through Lower Brooklyn at the time that I was doing my peds rotation right in the middle of COVID. Because I swear and peds covers all the way from 1 to 18. Mm-hmm. And they were redoing their ER. So even the minor cases of people like 21, 22 would go over to the peds section. They were redoing their main ER. So they would send like if it was a mild case, they would send it over there. And so I saw a lot of STDs, and I would just go around offering a little HIV check and everything else so I could put the line in.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a ton of practice, and some ladies took the time to show me really how to do it. And that definitely transferred because there wasn't another time where people sat down to teach me. That was the only time.
Right.
So yeah, that was great.
Did you see more chlamydia cases in like men or women? And what ages? Like teenagers? Or?
They were all like teenagers, because this is
Thank
the
God.
peds. Yeah,
Thank
they
God.
were all.
Well, I mean, but peds also includes
some
kids.
Some of them would be like 21. Oh, yeah. God, no, yeah.
I mean, I didn't even
think about that.
I hate it for the teenagers, but that's why I was asking. I didn't want you to say little
They
ones.
were all teenagers, or, they were all post-puberty, for the love of God.
So more men or more women?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Maybe 50-50?
I remember there was also an interesting time where a girl came in, and this is when I realized that I used to think a vaginal exam was the worst position you could be in during a medical examination, where you're sitting there.
As a woman, I can probably agree to that. But
I used to think that. But then I realized that if your butthole is itchy and we need to look at your rectum, that's definitely the worst position. And that can go for man or woman. I've seen it in both now, but was the first interesting.
Do you get on all fours as a patient?
On the bed.
On the table?
Yeah, you do.
In a gown, or do you just drop your pants?
For hers, I don't specifically remember. I don't know if she had gowned up.
You're distracted by the butthole.
I was not. I've slept since then. I do not remember the exact way this. I was not thinking of it in that way at all. I was the inflamed butthole. So she was bleeding from her butt, and her crotch was itchy. And our attending, this lady, she gets the girl in position, and then she looks at us. She goes, and it was me and Lauren. Mm-hmm. Me and Lauren. Shout out to Lauren Trachtenberg. She's been with me through a bunch of rotations. Actually, we might have to bring her on. But she looks at me and Lauren, and she goes, "What do you think that is?" And the whole time I'm looking at it, I'm like, I mean, it looks like herpes. But I'm not. I was like, I don't know anything. What? I'm just going to say that in the room? No. I was like,
in the room with the patient?
She definitely said it in the room with the girl, in face down, butt up.
Oh my God! What'd Lauren say?
Nothing.
Cancer? Yeah.
No. It wasn't even that obvious, right? It was very, very.
Yeah.
And we weren't expecting it to be that at all. When she was saying that she was bleeding from her butt, I was thinking GI issues or something else, And as a medical student, you're like so prone to think of all the other things. Mm-hmm. Then, yeah, something simple. And
so what was it?
So we walked out of the room, and then she was like, "Do you know what that was?" And I was like, I'm still like thinking that it's that, but I have no better option. So I'm like, I don't know. You think it's? I was like, could be herpes. And she was like, bingo. I was like, she asked me that in the room? How was I gonna, I did not want to say, like, there's a lot of thoughts going through my mind when she asked that question. And I was like, definitely not going to say this, be wrong in front of the patient. So I just said nothing.
I don't really like that the doctor asks you in front of the patient.
I don't think that girl was even paying attention. I'm not sure if she spoke English.
Oh, okay.
But
that's
either
a little
way,
better. That's a little better.
Like,
I am usually on the patient side of things. Mm-hmm. Not very often. I don't go to the doctor very much. But when I do, it's like hell for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be there. So I don't want my doctor looking at a student or whoever being like, oh, what do you think that is? Herpes? And I'm like, and then if the student's wrong, said it loud enough. Well, listen, if the student's wrong, now I'm just thinking herpes, even if it's not, mm-hmm. And then she could just be like, oh, it's a rash,
Yes. I bet 90% of the time that's how it goes down, with it not being right. Yeah, she's just like, oh, no, that's just swamp butt. And I just said, oh, no. I couldn't think of anything. Yeah.
Mud butt.
But it was very awkward because the boyfriend was in the waiting room.
Oh. So did you guys have to tell him, or is that her job?
No. Yeah. We don't tell him that.
I don't know. I feel like in the shows and the movies that they tell the boyfriend.
Well, that's false. You should not do that. That's not his knowledge. Yeah, that's Grey's Anatomy did you wrong there.
This is why I'm not in medical school.
I mean, I guess if you have HIV, you're supposed to tell it to the government. That is accurate. I don't believe any of the other ones.
You're not liable to tell it to the sexual partner, though. That's
it. Definitely not if it's anything. HIV is a tricky one where I think she's legally obligated to tell her partners, not me. I don't tell anybody anything.
Because of HIPAA?
Yeah. That's not their knowledge.
What if they're married? Then would you?
No. That is her, but I am not getting in the middle of any of that. Period.
What if she's unconscious for whatever reason?
And then I just flip, and then I go, by the way, buddy, your wife has herpes on her butt?
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, that's awkward. Pull the plug.
Well, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
Not getting in the middle of any of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went to Woodhull for the first time, and Sorry, that was a nice random tangent, but that was a good story. That one needed to come out. So we went to Woodhull the first time, and yeah, it was pretty sketchy. I'm glad y'all had to wait outside for me forever because I had to track down. It was ridiculous.
Thank God I had Riley, though, at the time, because the area we were in, no one liked dogs.
Yes, yeah.
So
Riley was good protection.
Yes. No, really, though. And even on the subway, like, no one would mess with me. No one would talk to me. They would go as far around me as possible. Mm-hmm. So, and Riley's really sweet, but she protects her mama.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I would say the good thing about having, because Riley rode the subway, and she did it really well, pretty much right out the gate. You know, that first one when she was, I think that was the first time when she went down and she realized that there was an underground level to the world. And she was just like, what the hell is going on here?
Am I in hell? Like,
yeah. What? Wait, the elevators go down?
Yeah. What the heck?
So she was kind of freaking out there, but honestly, she handled it very well. She would just lay under your feet, and the only people that would sit beside you on the subway were like really good people that were dog people.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to like sit there and pet her.
That wasn't many, honestly.
No. But if that means that the only people sitting beside you were people that, you know, you weren't worried about.
Yeah.
That trip, though, speaking of the subway, that trip was when I first realized how skilled you could be on a subway. So I don't know if you remember on the way back from Woodhull, we caught the J train, and there was this guy, and he was standing there, and he steps out into that middle railing between the cars. And this is an above ground. It's the above ground part of
the subway.
Like
high, like as tall as buildings, as some small buildings.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty high up there.
I forgot about
the guy is, and so anytime it's up there, you know, it's like jiggling back and forth. And the guy just is standing there. He had a newspaper because he was doing his crossword.
He's standing in between carts, by the way. Like in between the carts is open air. It's attached by like a chain on the bottom.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. Guy was holding a newspaper, had a pencil in his ear, steps outside, pulls out a cigarette. He lights it as the car's moving, which was, now that I'm thinking about it, is even impressive to get a lighter to light in a moving car.
Yeah.
Takes out his crossword, starts doing his crossword while he's smoking a cigarette.
I thought it was a lottery ticket.
It might have been a lottery. We'll say lottery ticket. So
because he was lucky.
Oh, yeah. So he takes off, starts scratching off his lottery ticket, and then he like scratches one down, shakes his head, puts it in his pocket, reaches in his jacket, and this is like his legs are on a constant moving the whole time, like because the whole thing is moving. And he's just like balanced.
We were sitting inside, like bumping in our seats.
Yeah, I was so impressed. I couldn't even look away. Takes a swig of his liquor bottle. Drops it right off the side of the subway.
He literally holds it out and just lets it go, and it just falls like probably, 100 feet at least?
Maybe. I think, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something like that.
It was pretty high.
It's high. It's like, yeah.
It was high.
50 to 100 feet, I'd say. Yeah, for sure. And it's high. And I definitely wouldn't want to be falling that distance.
I wouldn't want to be walking under the subway at that time. Could you imagine just
getting nailed by a random
actually
plastic liquor bottle?
Yeah.
So he drops the liquor, falls, knocks somebody out, I'm sure. Pulls out another lottery ticket, marks out another one, finishes the drag on a cigarette, flicks it, shakes his head, walks inside, and he's just standing beside us again. I was like, dude, what are you? I was like,
we're like, what the heck just happened?
I was like, these people are impressive.
He like stumbled inside. Like he was drunk.
He was drunk as hell. He was probably the liquor bottle was done, by the way, when he let it go. It was not like it was full.
Probably on drugs, just doing his thing of his trying to win some money, you know.
3 p.m. baby.
At least. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. Like I was scared inside the cart from falling off. Here he is just outside in between these two carts. Like we're high and we're moving pretty fast, and he's just not a care in the world.
You can see a lot of interesting things on a New York subway station.
Oh, that trip, we also had those kids. Didn't we have those kids that trip?
The ones that dance?
The dance off?
Oh, yeah. That happens on any trip from Brooklyn to, I've realized that, from Brooklyn to Manhattan on a good weekend.
there's always a
their
group
hustle
of
on.
kids who bring like this boom box, and one of them is like the money person who like walks around with their hat trying to collect money. And then the other guy is holding the boom box, and then the other ones are just like flipping on the rails and, you know, just trying to get as much money as they can.
That trip over the Brooklyn Bridge, I've heard people sing like opera before. I watched one dude just do a long diatribe about his struggles. I was like, oh my God.
To you?
And he was releasing a book, and he had a Venmo. I don't know. No. To everybody. To everybody.
Okay.
A long, prolonged speech from one end of the Brooklyn Bridge to the other. I was like, I got to get off this on the next. But yeah, he was just like, you can Venmo me. I swear he had a long troubled past. I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, riding the New York subway, you will see some of the strangest things. We would take this. So me and Lauren, she actually lived in Jersey City as well, and so we would take the train pretty much there and back every day. And I remember the one time I didn't go, there was something I didn't have to go in, or maybe I had to go in later. I think that was what it was. Lauren had somebody ask her for a coffee. Like somebody woke up, somebody was sleeping on the subway, and they like woke up and they're like, "Hey, can I have your coffee?" And she was like, Lauren's like so nice. She didn't even say no. She was just like, "Oh, like, do you have a cup or something? I'll pour you some. This is my own personal mug." And she like lunged at her and was like, "Give me your coffee, bitch." Like a lot of the other people in the subway were like, "Hey, what are you doing, lady? Like, get off of her."
She tried to take her own personal.
She lunged and tried, and like she, yeah. I will have
Give
to
me
get
your
her.
coffee. Literally
just yelled at her like, "Give me your coffee," and lunged at her like that scene from the Lord of the Rings.
Precious.
Yeah, when he's like, but yeah, so there's a lot of interesting. That was the one time I didn't ride with her. I was like, man, that's exciting.
Yeah. Anywho, we're going on tangents.
There was a lot of great
Brooklyn
things
subway.
that happened during that trip.
So Pediatrics was your first rotation. Did you apply for it to? Did you set it up to be your first rotation, or did they just kind of give you your schedule?
They just gave me the schedule. I didn't really get to choose at all.
What are you glad you did it first though?
Yeah,
it's kind of like an easy stepping stone.
It was a super easy stepping stone. Everybody, I will tell you one thing: pediatricians are probably the nicest people ever.
Really?
Even when they're super stressed out, they are very pleasant to be around. There's not really very many like rude and abrupt pediatricians. Mm-hmm. And it was great. And honestly, while Woodhull might not have been the ideal thing for some of the SU students, like I remember a lot of people complain, like I really liked it. And I love the fact that they had the emergency aspect of the pediatric rotation. The actual main person was in the ER mainly, and that's why we got to do that. But I don't know a lot of people that got to do that one, and that's where, I got some of the funniest stories, and honestly, we got to see some interesting cases. And also, I had this one pediatrician, I guess now this is a random thought that's going in my head, but he gave me a really good piece of advice. It was because we kept looking at rashes, right? You look at rashes constantly and you say the baby's fine. And then he would take me back. We would say the baby's fine. And he would take me back and he'd be like, do you know what this rash would look like? And I would be like, no, I have no idea, because I'm so bad with rashes. They all look like red bumps to me sometimes. So he takes me in and he's showing me all these ones and he's like, you have to know, because if something's serious, you're not paid to just reassure. What you're paid to do is know when something is serious or not. And that's why they need you. And he was like, so you need to know some of these wild rashes as well, just in case. He's like, don't just learn the basics, because if you're gonna do pediatrics, like, you're gonna have to know when something is serious as well, because that's the child's life.
Yeah.
On the line, and that's why you need a good pediatrician. I was like, oh man, that's good advice. I was like,
yeah, no, that is good. Yeah. That makes sense.
Worked with that guy one day, bestowed a lot of advice on me, and then I was like, man, I wish I could work with you again. It's my last day.
Oh, bummer. That stinks. But pediatrics allowed you to be really hands-on and stuff, and I feel like they taught you a lot. Very
hands-on. Yeah, if you're at Woodhull, it really is just a matter of what you want to put into it, because the people would let me even run, the interviews pretty much by, if I wanted to, I could run the interviews by myself, and they would let you do whatever you really wanted to. That was the thing, is it was just a matter of how much did you want. And I'm always like, hey, I'll do that. There was one, even in the outpatient clinic, one of the doctors, he was a Pakistani doctor that had come over to the U.S. and he knew no Spanish. And almost all the patients were like Spanish speaking. And so he was just like, he was having such a hard time communicating. And I speak like 4th grade Spanish, but I was like, hey, I was able to somehow miraculously figure out what was going on and I could like help him out. And he was like, oh, you're like helpful.
Yeah.
So then I got to do, all the exams and be like, abre la boca. And just like open your mouth, and
cool.
Poke the baby's belly and do all that stuff,
Yeah.
So that was, it was definitely hands-on. Got to do a lot of things that,
How many patients would you say you saw in a day?
It depended on the subspecialty. As far as outpatient, they had decent hours, and it was probably like 12 patients, maybe more, maybe less.
Is that a lot or?
Actually,
typical?
And I think we didn't even have to be there the whole time they were. So, but I think it might have been like 20 patients, and it's not a lot. Or it was a lot at the time. Like it filled the whole time slot. Yeah. And it carried over. I would say I don't know what the average pediatric patients are, but sometimes they're a little bit more involved. Sometimes the older the child gets, one thing, but sometimes you have to like take time to test everything and speak to the parents.
Yeah. What is the majority? What would you say the top cases were that you saw? Like rashes, you said you saw a lot, and then you said it was also like where you were was the heart of chlamydia, apparently.
Yeah, rashes. So the great thing about children is most of the time they're good. Most of the time. So it would really just be like rashes. We did have the chlamydia. There was a chlamydia outbreak or whatever during that time. So there was a lot of STDs. I would say STDs probably the top of the list, to be honest. Really? Asthma attacks, things like that.
Would you see
Sometimes
a lot of...
the baby would have like some gastroenteritis or something that would scare the mom. I did see a super interesting case of this baby with like super severe aortic stenosis. And for anybody that's listening that's not in medicine or anything, that's essentially where your aortic valve, which is the valve that allows the blood to leave the heart and go to the rest of the body, that valve is kind of tight and it won't open as freely. So you have valves in your heart so that blood is not just shooting back and forth and everything. And this one, it takes a lot more force to shoot up.
So in layman's terms,
the baby was struggling to get blood to the rest of the body. It was building up in the heart.
There you go. That's the real...
Oh, I thought I did a good job of explaining what an aortic valve is.
That's the scientific way.
Well, I only explained it like that because on the baby, it had a very palpable thrill, which is the fact that I could put my hand on the baby's chest and I could feel its heart. That's how hard it was pushing to get the blood out.
Which makes sense. It makes sense. And I'm glad you told the scientific way. But for the people who really don't even understand the science way, like myself, you have to dumb it down even farther.
Yeah, we have multiple levels of explanation.
Yes. You are up top, then your first explanation's pretty high still, and then I'm way at the bottom.
The baby, that was an interesting case because the baby was barely eating, and it would sweat a lot when it was eating, and it was really struggling. Now, the good thing about that is it was an interesting case because the baby would sweat when it ate, and it pretty much was standard for when a baby has this aortic stenosis, because sometimes you don't immediately echo a child's chest to see what the valves look like. But these are like some signs that you would notice if the baby was, just struggling to eat and everything like that, you would want to check the heart. And this baby needed surgery. So it was good that we caught it. I got to see it, and, then you refer it to the cardiothoracic surgeon that would have been doing the aortic repair.
Okay, cool. How much childhood obesity did you see? A good bit?
I did see a good bit. So the cool thing about Woodhull is when you did the outpatient pediatrics, every day there would be a specialist that would come by. Now, you could go do just regular checkups with some of the doctors, but I would always go with the specialist if I could, which was cardiology, where I saw the aortic stenosis. But also there would be endocrinology, which is like your hormones and diabetes and stuff like that. So I would actually spend a whole day just seeing diabetic patients and stuff like that. There was a lot of obesity. There's a lot of obesity, period. Like even you would see, and sometimes it's tough. I understand the pain of pediatricians because the teenagers would be really upset about their weight as well.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be comforting. And, I remember one girl was like heavier than me. And the doctor said that to the mother, like, we gotta, no more McDonald's, no more, that doctor was kind of being
hardcore, straightforward.
A little tough though. She was like, come on. She looked at me and she was like, how much do you weigh? And she goes like, come on.
Yeah.
Focus.
Well, I mean, sometimes you just have to, like.
Yes. That was a good she was also very kind. She was just being like, she said it in a better way, but yeah, you have to explain that it was dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of diabetes. There's a lot of fat kids out there. Hate to say that.
There are. That's why I wanted to know if you saw a lot.
A lot of fat kids out there. Go out and play. This
listening.
podcast is sponsored by Nike.
Or McDonald's.
Probably McDonald's before Nike.
What's your top advice to give medical students to prepare for their pediatrics rotation?
At first, I would say that I really got a lot out of it because I wanted to learn, and I would go in there and just be nice. And, if you don't like kids and everything like that, then, I guess I can understand why you would be kind of standoffish at your pediatric rotation. But honestly, I think this rotation specifically, it was more of you got out of it what you put into it. So I know a lot of people.
That's for every rotation though. So
yes, but this one specifically, the people were nice enough that if you want to leave, I guess you could leave. But they would let you do literally everything and anything you wanted to do with like no strings attached. Sometimes there's a little bit of, like, they're only letting you do it to help them out or do, like they would just be there and there was a lot of very kind and helpful people there. So that one, and this is specifically for Woodhull. I'm not saying just every peds because I guess some places are probably different. But I would say that was helpful. Just do, I guess that's basic ass advice is, but that was one that was helpful for me.
My question is, what advice would you give to people who are about to start the pediatrics rotation?
I would say make sure to interact with the kids and the parents. That was helpful. Just find a way to be useful, especially if you want to learn. Kids usually, the good thing is you can usually do a lot of procedures and stuff like that on kids, and it can be like there's not going to be as much complaining. The kid might complain, but you can do a lot of things in that realm.
Yeah. So how did you prepare for the shelf?
So because that's the issue is that the shelf has not, like the actual score that you get from medical school has absolutely nothing to do with how much work you put into the rotation and how much time you spend.
Yes.
The shelf is going to be like 60% of your grade while just you doing these minor things and professionalism and other things like that, those all factor in for the rest of it. So it really depends on what grade you get on the final. And a lot of people don't worry about the rotation. The shelf is, I would say, start early. There is the good thing about those train rides to Brooklyn were the fact that I did UWorld during the time. I didn't start necessarily hitting it hard right at the very beginning, but I would make sure to do things during that free time. And it paid off in the long run. Like, I honored that shelf. It's not that bad. The real thing is, I think you just need to get used to, like, there's a lot of recurring things, and there's a lot of things that are very, very similar with just a minor twist to them. And that's the stuff that they ask on the shelf. In the instance of, this baby does it have a foreign body in its throat, or did it just forget to breathe? Or there's like a couple there's sometimes kids forget to breathe, and sometimes they stub their toe, and then that's why they're not breathing. Okay. And it's all based on timelines and stuff like that. You need to just know stuff like in that quarter where, and I remember I had like a long, like I took a little picture of the UWorld where for all the reasons a kid would have like diarrhea and upset stomach and stuff like that. And that was super helpful to just break everything down by category, and then from that category, figure out what are the things that are super common, and just make sure you know the differences between those. That is the way to study for that shelf.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Do UWorld. I didn't do anything but UWorld and Emma Holiday, and actually, I don't even think I used Emma Holiday. I think I only used Dr. High Yield because that was the only one I'd heard of at the time. But he has a good one. He has a good one.
Did the shelf help you prepare for step 2? Would you say a lot of the questions that you saw on the shelf, or even in studying, I know pediatrics isn't a large portion of the step 2, but
the thing is, it was so long ago.
I know.
I would say that there was a decent amount of pediatrics, like a decent, not like a ton, but like a chunk of my shelf, or not my shelf, my step was a little bit of pediatrics. I would say also family med. A portion of that shelf was all pediatrics.
What kind of pediatric issues did you see on your step?
I think the most key point for the pediatrics part is actually like the rashes. Rashes, specific genetic disorders that are apparent at birth. Maybe like the reasons children stop breathing,
Okay.
Either whether it's at the very beginning, like C-section wise, or I think most of the pediatric stuff though was, a good way to ask the question is to show a picture of a kid with like a messed up mouth.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And then it's like, what's going on here? Well, that's, whether it's a vitamin deficiency or he's got Kawasaki's or some other thing, like that's just a quick answer. And they love to do that. They love to like just throw a picture of a child up there, or diaper rash versus Canada or something like that, which is a fungus, And so you look at the picture and you're supposed to know.
Okay, so there's a lot of photos and pictures for.
So they like to use photos, not necessarily in the pediatric shelf, but if it comes from any other material like STEP or like family medicine shelf, and even internal medicine had a little pediatrics. Most of those were like pictures of it was usually like picture associated, or maybe like a genetic disorder that's apparent at early on in development. I will say for the actual pediatric shelf though, it was a lot of internal medicine and everything. It wasn't I would say like 50% of it was more not just necessarily pediatric questions, but also internal medicine. So if anybody's taken that, I would be aware of that.
I remember you saying that, and also saying you honored it and did really well on the shelf, but maybe if you would have had internal medicine first, then it would have been even easier.
It would have been way easier. The internal medicine though, if you are taking pediatrics first like me, I did watch the Emma Holiday internal medicine video before I took that shelf. It didn't catch me on anything. That one was a good video to prep me up for it. And there was a lot of internal, where it's just it would be asking a question that would be internal medicine, whether it be cardiology or GI, and they just put it in a little human.
Gotcha. I have one more question, and then I want you to tell one more story, and then we'll wrap it up. But the question I have is, are you glad you did pediatrics first? Yeah. Would you suggest it to other people?
Probably not, to be honest. It's always nice to have a stepping stone, I guess. And so that, I guess, if that's what you're looking for, then that one was a great stepping stone. But also, it would have been nice to have that later if I had started with internal medicine first, like we were talking about with the shelf, or surgery, any of those other ones, to knock out the heavies early.
Okay.
And where Woodhull would not, I spent a lot of time there, even when I didn't have to.
Yeah.
And you later in your career, or when things start to wind down, after third and fourth year, you really want that extra time.
Right.
So I would say it wouldn't be the top thing to do. I would say just go ahead and throw yourself to the wolves.
Yeah.
Because you'll come back a lot tougher if you do that.
Okay, that's good advice. And then one story I remember you coming home and telling me about, which I didn't realize this, like, in the whole process of, like, having a baby. Like, I know, like, the OBGYN, like, delivers the baby, but the pediatrician is, like, there, too. And I remember you coming home after, like, helping with your first baby. You were so excited. Well, you texted me first, and you were like, I delivered a baby. Or you were like, well, I didn't deliver it, but
I caught the baby.
I caught it. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean you caught it?
I mean, he threw it.
He literally, like, pitched it to you like a football.
That was very exciting. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
I was so excited.
Yeah.
So in OB, the OB like when you're doing a C-section, the surgical team is going to take the baby out, and then the OB is going to turn around and hand it to the pediatrician. The pediatrician does the rest of the stuff on the baby while the OB like fixes up the mom and does all that stuff. So that was they were just like, are you ready to... What
was your role initially? Just to watch?
So I guess the role for most students would
It's
be
to
either
observe.
to watch or to do that, because there's literally nothing else. And like when I got the baby there, you dry the baby off, you make sure it's crying and doing all that. That's a beautiful sound. When a baby cries for the first time,
Yeah.
you're like, thank the Lord. Like a strong, healthy cry.
Yeah. It's got 10 fingers, 10 toes.
Oh, there's something, maybe it's just a genetic response or like a psychological response, but
I thought you told me it
love
was.
I don't know that specifically, but every time I've ever been in that situation, I have this overwhelming good feeling. But yeah, so I got in there and, either you're going to watch it or I guess the only other thing is to catch the baby, but because that's, I guess, the easiest job, but also the way this guy threw it at me, it might have been the toughest.
Yeah, so
The most nerve-wracking, at least. Ugh.
he pitched it to you and you just, like, cleaned it off?
So, yeah, he didn't... Okay, so essentially the reason the pediatricians wanted me to do the catching of the baby is because I had to scrub. I had to essentially scrub in and do all that other, like, cleaning myself, and they didn't have to do that. So that's one of the perks of having me do it, was I would, like, go get scrubbed in and stand there just patiently waiting for the baby to be thrown at me.
Right.
But it was a beautiful moment. Baby came out. I got to stand there. I couldn't see the surgery at all, even though I wanted to. I was like standing on my tiptoes, couldn't see anything. And he pulls the baby out, and he really did, like, he had one hand on his back and like one hand on his foot, and he just kind of like slung it at me. I was expecting it to be like softly placed in my arms. I mean, I caught it. It was fine. It didn't hit the ground.
Thank God you're an athlete.
Yeah, I guess if that's what it was, more of just pure adrenaline, and I did not want to be the one that dropped the baby.
Could you imagine?
But it was funny enough that one of the other students was like, man, it was a kind of a tough throw at you. He's like, what would you have done if you had dropped it?
Just quit medical school.
Yeah. At that point, you just got to double down and kick it. I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God.
I'm kidding. But it was so beautiful. I got to catch a little baby. I was like, oh. And I took it back, cleaned it off, cried. And then after that, though, that's the best part about. So now after I've seen the C-section at the beginning, or I've seen the C-section from the OB end and the pediatrician end, I remember waiting for like an hour and a half before even going down there. And they were like, oh, we're just going to wait until it's our time. And they really do. The pediatricians, like the OB in them, that could be a pretty decently long surgery.
Yeah.
Depending on everything that's going on. Pediatricians go in, collect the baby, leave. It was easily 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. I was there.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And so I didn't even see the OB student until way later in the day. And he was like, man, that was when he had said the thing about me catching the baby. And I was like, because he had been in there for a hot minute after.
Gotcha.
And I was like, these guys are like rock stars. They just come in, catch the baby, leave. And then, the baby's just waiting on you. And I was like, that was an interesting time too because of COVID. I remember I had to do a report on this because we were concerned at first. This was right at the very beginning of COVID, and we were concerned that COVID could be spread to the baby. And so that the mother is supposed to always get like an hour of like, I guess it's like tummy time or whatever, where the mother can spend with their baby, like where they can just bond right after the birth. Right? When the doctor gets the baby, then gives it to the mother. Well, we were very concerned because that's a big step in building like relationships for the child. But then also we were concerned that if the mother had COVID and you did that, would the baby have COVID when it came to us? And could it spread it to the rest of the hospital?
That's silly.
Yes, but at the time, remember we said it was in October, so everybody was
true.
Tons of questions. And I remember I had to do a bunch of research on this, and essentially they were deciding at the time that the mom still just needed that time. No matter what, it would be more damaging then. And so if the mom didn't have time, so we would take the baby after that, and then we'd have to swab the baby for COVID.
And didn't you have to do that?
Yeah, I did swab a couple babies with COVID, and it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever done. Because they're just sleeping in the NICU, and they're not expecting me to just come in, stick that thing in their nose. I felt so bad.
I bet. I would have too. Because then you wake them up, and they're crying.
Yeah, then they were crying.
And how many were positive?
But those babies, they actually had to be isolated from all the other babies, too. So this is like a baby in a lone NICU, separate room, just because we're waiting for the verification of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's probably doing damage even in itself. And you just got me sticking things in your nose.
Yeah, that's damage too.
Yeah.
That's your first memory. Or that baby's first memory.
That literally is the baby's first memory is me doing a COVID test.
Yeah.
Poor kid. Yeah, so I think this is probably where we're going to wrap it up. I know this has been a lot of stories by me. I forgot I even remembered all this stuff.
It just kind of starts flowing.
It starts flowing, yeah. So I've been doing a lot of talking, even though Mary Beth is the host. We're going to nail this down, and I'll learn to be more quiet in the next ones. If you have any questions about you having a pediatric rotation or any of the things that I've said on this podcast, yeah, feel free to message us at offwhitecoatpodcast@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on our Instagram. And we out.
Hey everyone, I want to take this time to tell you about our friends over at TrueLearn. They have this top-of-the-line test bank that is perfect for any upcoming board exams that you may have. They have test banks for all types of exams. So whether you're studying for medical school, nursing school, OT, pharmacy, and others like speech pathology, TrueLearn is the way to go. If you're like me and going through medical school, they have question banks for all the big exams, like Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, with quality assessments for each exam. Look, I know we didn't go into healthcare because we love taking tests. This is the hard part of the job. Make it easy on yourself with TrueLearn. Sign up now with the code OFFWHITECOAT to get $25 off your purchase. That's OFF WHITECOAT, no spaces, to get $25 off your purchase. This is a test bank that you do not want to pass up on. Make this easy on yourself. Take the deal, pass your boards, and get back to enjoying the reason you went into healthcare. And make sure to use Off White Coat when you pick it up.